All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting for Monday, April 17th, 2017. My name is Mark Farrell. I'll be chairing this committee. I am joined by our committee vice chair, Supervisor Aaron Peskin, committee member Katie Tang, and with us today is Supervisor Hillary Ronan. I want to thank the clerk of our committee, Ms. Elisa Samara, as well as Phil Jackson and Maya Hernandez from SFG TV for covering this meeting today. Madam Clerk, do we have any announcements?
Yes, please make sure to silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Completed speaker cards and copies of any documents to be included as part of the file should be submitted to the clerk. Items acted upon today will appear on the April 25th Board of Supervisors agenda unless otherwise stated.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. If that, would you call item number one?
Item number one is an ordinance amending the Green Building Code to establish requirements for the installation of electric vehicle charger infrastructure in new buildings or those undergoing major alterations and making appropriate findings.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, this item was sponsored by our committee member, Supervisor Katie Tang. So, Supervisor Tang, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. So we're here just to make a very simple amendment today to this EV readiness legislation, which we heard at Land Use Committee last week. After hearing some concerns from various associations, the Department of Environment has met with organizations such as SF Apartment Association, and we are proposing a change on page 7 of the packet, which you should have before you, starting line 6 through 8. Essentially, we are exempting projects that are undertaken specifically to meet the city's mandatory seismic retrofit program from our EV readiness ordinance. And as you probably remember from last week, the argument made was that the city has a mandatory program, and then we have another EV readiness ordinance on top of that. And so there was a desire to exempt the mandatory seismic retrofit units, buildings from the EV readiness ordinance. So I don't know if you have any questions. SF Environment staff are here if you have any. Otherwise, I can make a motion after public comment.
Okay, colleagues, any questions, comments on item number one?
Thank you, Chair Farrell. To Supervisor Tang, I appreciate the fact that the Department of the Environment undertook those meetings and appreciate this amendment, which I spoke to a little bit based on correspondence that we received. There was another point raised with regard to also exempting accessory dwelling units in the same regard. Not that I think there will be many of them in 25,000 square foot buildings, but I was wondering if there had been any conversation with the Department of the Environment, or I know those issues were raised in some correspondence that we received.
Sure, and maybe I'll have Guillermo Rodriguez come up from SF Environment, who is part of those conversations.
Good afternoon, supervisors. For the record, Guillermo Rodriguez, Department of the Environment. As Supervisor Tang mentioned at the last meeting, we heard broad-based support for the ordinance, but the San Francisco Apartment Association and the Coalition for Better Housing raised some concerns. We met with them last week. We had a very good meeting. We walked through the ordinance in great detail, talked about the various provisions in the ordinance that address many of the types of buildings that are existing undergoing seismic retrofit. We also did discuss some of the ADUs questions. I think we came to a good agreement on the amendment that's before you today with respect to the seismic retrofit program. We went and looked at a lot of those projects that are currently at DBI. We looked at the definitions. We looked at some of those projects to see if they would trigger the existing building retrofits and then require this. And out of abundance of caution, we decided to go with the amendment that's before you today. With respect to the accessory dwelling units, again, we believe that the ordinance has strong provisions in place to address many of those types of projects. Again, the 25,000 square foot definition of a plan area really is extremely large size, as well as you have to pull significant electrical, plumbing, mechanical structure, and we feel that those provisions are strong enough in the existing ordinance to deal with ADUs. We also believe that if it does become an issue going forward, or we can identify projects that may trigger, we can certainly come back to the board and address those concerns. Thank you.
So, Chair Farrell and Supervisor Tang, I mean, based on what Mr. Rodriguez said, and insofar as we do not want to discourage them, I thought I would offer a amendment number 5 to insert after, and this would be subject to public comment, of course, that would read, where a project is undertaken to construct an accessory dwelling unit pursuant to Section 207C of the San Francisco Planning Code.
Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. I do appreciate that thought, but I do have to stand by, I think, what Mr. Rodriguez just said. And I even clarified that when it comes to major renovations, which I forget which page it's on, but I clarified with DBI, for example, that it would be 3 out of the 4, on page 4, major alterations. It would be 3 out of the 4 permits that you have to pull regarding structural and mechanical, electrical, and or plumbing systems. So again, as page 4 in the bottom, as Mr. Rodriguez mentioned, I do believe that those are significant enough where in most cases probably it wouldn't trigger an ADU alteration.
Okay, colleagues, any further discussion? Okay, we will open this up to public comment. Are there members of the public wish to comment on item number 1? Please come forward. You can line up against the far wall. Everyone will have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Janann New, San Francisco Apartment Association. Thank you very much to all of you, and thanks to the Department of Environment for working on this legislation with us. Our initial request was to exempt seismic and exempt ADUs from this program. We believe that getting more ADUs put on the market is a really important policy goal of this Board of Supervisors, and we want to make that as easy as possible. So if we could exempt those, that would be our preference, but I don't want to say that the Department of Environment hasn't reached out to us and done their best. We just kind of reached this policy impasse, so whatever you decide today. But I think our policy goal is to get as much seismic work done and as many ADUs on the market as we possibly can. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Corey Smith on behalf of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. Actually really agree with the previous speaker's comments. We're kind of at a draw here between we want environmentally friendly cars and at the same time we need more housing. Whatever we can do to move this legislation forward, we are in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Laura Tam on behalf of SPUR. I'm here to support the proposed legislation amending the Green Building and Environment Codes to require the installation of vehicle chargers and conduit for future chargers in new buildings and undergoing major alterations. I don't think I'm prepared to comment on the ADU amendment that was just proposed, but I would say that today's exemptions for seismic is a good change. SPUR has for a long time thought that we, of course, need to solve our housing problems, but we also need to solve our climate change problems. In our 2016 policy report, Fossil Free Bay Area, we found that personal cars are the largest single contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in the Bay Area. To meet state emissions goals by 2050, the Air Resources Board of California found that 100% of cars that are sold need to be zero-emission vehicles. And then to meet the state's goals by 2025, SPUR calculated that we need to add about 10 times as much EV charging capacity as we have today throughout the Bay Area. So this legislation is directly in line with a SPUR recommendation that local governments require that all new buildings, residential and commercial, because we don't really know how much charging is going to take place at these types of locations in the future, to be EV ready. And this both adds capacity and, as SFE has shown, will reduce the future cost of having to make retrofits. I would have preferred an earlier version of this legislation to be more like Oakland's that required an additional 10% of conduit be added to new parking structures in addition to the 10% turnkey. But we still offer our support, including for the seismic exemption, with one implementation request perhaps for SFE. While we and others believe that the electric car market share is going to grow and should grow as a percentage of all cars in the future, we also acknowledge that other technologies may come to the fore and eclipse electrification. As well, personal vehicle ownership could decline with the advent of autonomous shared vehicles, and wireless charging could become possible. So we suggest doing a review sometime in the future, maybe 2 or 5 years, to see how implementation is going and to assess whether continued scaling up of electrification infrastructure is still relevant, or if we even need...
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Spencer Krim, and I represent ChargePoint. Thanks for the opportunity to speak in support of this legislation. My job at ChargePoint is to expand our network, which is the largest in the country, of EV charging stations here in San Mateo County, or in San Francisco County, but also the Peninsula and North Bay. And I have over 130 corporate customers here in San Francisco, including the city and county of San Francisco. Every day I'm working with property managers, owners, tenants who want the benefit of providing EV charging. And these organizations include high-tech employers, Class A real estate developers, nonprofits, schools, hospitals, multifamily housing, parking garage operators. Across this whole diverse group of stakeholders, whether new construction or a retrofit, the question is always, how do we keep costs down? And this proposed legislation is an important step. And ChargePoint is in support of this, what we believe is a well-defined or well-designed piece of legislation to keep those costs down. Whether we need to plan ahead for EV charging shouldn't really be up for debate. Nearly 1 in 5 electric vehicles sold in the U.S. are sold here in the Bay Area. U.S. EV sales have grown every year. We're already on pace to beat 35% more than last year for EVs. So how to best support these electric vehicles is to provide them with a place to charge, and to do that cost effectively. This legislation is well designed, and ChargePoint is in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Thank you for your time today. My name is Bo Whiteman. I'm here on behalf of Tesla to offer our support of the proposed ordinance for make-ready EV charging infrastructure. In order to meet the state's goals of EV adoption over the coming years, it is necessary to increase access to EV charging infrastructure. Both with this mandate, as well as the launch of new and more affordable long-range electric vehicles, including our own Model 3 later this summer, we are going to have more EV drivers dwelling in dense urban areas where access to charging infrastructure may be difficult due to high upfront costs, and therefore may put an EV out of someone's reach. This ordinance is a smart, low-cost solution, given the analysis done by PG&E, which well demonstrated upfront costs versus retrofit costs of EV infrastructure. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Chair Farrell and supervisors. My name is Jed Holtzman, co-coordinator of 350 San Francisco, a local group of 350 Bay Area, climate advocacy nonprofit. Want to support this legislation and thank Supervisor Tang and the Department of Environment staff for working on it. We do a lot of work with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and actually tomorrow they will be approving their 2017 Clean Air Plan, which provides a vision for the Bay Area in 2050 to be fossil-free. It calls for decarbonizing industry and electrifying transportation wherever possible, and this is a critical piece of that. Ultimately, we do have a housing issue, but civilization will end in a couple of generations, as we know it, if we do not substantially rectify our climate issue. That is what international science now says. It seems penny-wise and pound-foolish to be quibbling over what counts as an alteration when we know that we're going to need 100% penetration of electrification for transportation. Do support Ms. Tam's comment. I do think that there is place for technology review at a regular period of time to make sure that we're not spending money on something ineffective and that we're keeping up with the newest trends. But ultimately, what we need to do is make sure that every parking space in this city eventually can provide for non-fossil-free transportation, and that needs to start now, or else the glide path for industry will be even more expensive. Just wanted to kind of flag that I mentioned that the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, they are going to be looking at providing funding, best practices, et cetera, on EV charging and could potentially play a role in spreading legislation like this around the region. Lastly, Clean Power SF. Sonoma Clean Power has actually instituted a program to vastly increase EV adoption in Sonoma. If Clean Power SF does the same thing, we will need these chargers more.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, supervisors. My name is Stacy Renexis. I'm CEO and founder of Power Tree Services. We are an EV charging service provider focused exclusively on providing services to apartment dwellers. I think the points that have been made by the prior commenters are very much on point. I would highlight as well that there is a social balance, social justice aspect to EV charging for apartment dwellers. Currently, according to the CCSE, which administers the state EV rebate program, about 95% of all vehicles that are plug-ins that have been sold to single-family homeowners. Yet San Francisco has about 2/3 of its population that rent. This means that those renters who would like to have chargers and have electric vehicles are being denied access to the federal rebates, the state rebates, and to the savings that an electric vehicle can provide to the ownership. And as a result, it's also impoverishing our community by denying the economic benefits of those savings from being spent locally. So keep in mind that as much as possible, providing access to EV charging for renters is a significant benefit on multiple levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. And anybody else wish to speak in public comment on item number 1, please feel free to line up.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am Joseph Nagel. I'm here representing EverCharge. We are also in support of this legislation. I would just like to point out that currently there is a 10-to-1 EV vehicles to electric vehicle charging stations in the city. This needs to change in order for electric vehicles to continue to grow. Studies have also shown that 90% of EV drivers prefer to charge at work or home where one or both are available. This legislation absolutely meets that goal, and I very much hope that you put it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Laura Clark, YIMBY Action. I just want to remind everyone that this is maybe okay legislation, but the most powerful thing we can do to make sure that we are building green communities is to build dense urban infill in transit-rich communities, which means building a lot more housing, and this may increase the cost of building housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak in public comment? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed for item number 1. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. I would just say that I will work with SF Environment in terms of reevaluating what other new technology might be out there on the market. Absolutely. I think that's crucial. And so you have my commitment to continue to do that, as well as SF Environment's. Again, I would just say that I would propose the amendment that I initially stated, which is to exempt projects undergoing the mandatory seismic retrofit program in San Francisco. I would not include ADUs because we already do have quite a high threshold for what would trigger a major alteration. And on top of that, again, we do want to encourage as many people to be able to drive EVs as possible while capturing the window of time where it is actually less expensive to be able to install the infrastructure rather than trying to go back to really old buildings later on to install the charging infrastructure. So with that said, then I would like to make the motion to adopt the amendments I stated on page 7, lines 6 through 8.
Okay, Supervisor Tang has made a motion. Supervisor Peskin on the motion.
I think we can take that without objection. And just so that we're clear, first of all, let me thank the Department of the Environment and Supervisor Tang and the mayor for bringing this forward. It is, I think, very good legislation. And I think the amendment that we are, I think, all in agreement on is about balancing competing needs, two very important public policy goals, one about seismic safety and the other about climate change, ultimately. I think number 5 falls, at least for me, in that same vein. Again, I don't think it is going to be used very much. I think this is mostly going to be taken advantage of in new construction in most cases. But to the extent that we have a priority of building ADUs, I would like to at least have a vote on that one-sentence amendment that I offered, a new number 5 under the number 4, which I am prepared to take without objection.
Okay, so first of all, Supervisor Tang's motion, Supervisor Peskin as a second. We can take that without objection. And Supervisor Peskin, you wanted to make a motion.
Yeah, I made the motion. I don't think actually in committee we need a second. I think we can just vote on it.
Okay, roll call on Supervisor Peskin's motion.
On the amendment as proposed by Supervisor Peskin, Supervisor Tang?
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Nope.
Farrell, no. There's one aye and 2 noes with Supervisors Tang and Farrell in the dissent.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm sure that will be part of our discussion in a few minutes here. I just similarly want to thank Supervisor Tang and our Department of the Environment for working on this issue. I think this is awesome legislation. It's been about a year since I switched to an electric vehicle, and it's not only been an awesome driving experience, you sure feel good about doing that here for all the right reasons in the city of San Francisco. So the more that we can build out our infrastructure, I'm a huge proponent of, and just want to thank you, everybody, especially Supervisor Tang, for leadership on this issue. So with that, on the underlying item, do we need a roll call vote? Supervisor Peskin, do we need a roll call vote on?
No.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Tang.
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to send this forth to the full board with positive recommendation as amended as a committee report.
Motion by Supervisor Tang, and we can take that without objection. All right. Madam Clerk, what do you call item number 2?
Item number 2 is a resolution reaffirming the board's support for urban agriculture and urging the evaluation and allocation of appropriate properties for urban agriculture.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So, colleagues, this item was sponsored by Supervisors Ronan and Tang, I believe. And Supervisor Ronan has joined us. So, Supervisor Ronan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, today I am proud to assume the authorship of a resolution together with Supervisor Tang on urban agriculture in San Francisco. Supervisor Avalos, the former District 11 supervisor, originally introduced this resolution on the heels of the closure of Little City Gardens in District 11 last December, which was a beloved neighborhood garden that was a national model for urban farming. This resolution reaffirms San Francisco's commitment to evaluate and allocate properties for urban agriculture so that hopefully in the future we can recreate the magic of Little City Gardens without having to shut it down. In 2009, San Francisco made a commitment to prioritize urban agriculture and local food production through former Mayor Gavin Newsom's Executive Director 9-03, the Healthy and Sustainable Food for San Francisco. In 2011, the city demonstrated further commitment to urban agriculture by modifying our planning code to allow urban agriculture in all zones throughout the city. As recently as 2014, our city created the first urban agriculture incentive zone by implementing State Assembly Bill 551, which allowed the city to evaluate possible sites for urban agriculture, including surplus properties and privately owned sites for public acquisition. It has been 3 years, and we have yet to secure land for additional permanent community urban agricultural projects that can provide both open space and educational opportunities for children, family, and adults, and the chance to grow fresh fruits, vegetables, and flowers right here within our city. I understand that there are questions about competing priorities for land use, given our huge affordability and housing crisis in the city. It's certainly building housing is a top priority for my district. And while housing is a top priority, we also have to balance our housing development in this growing city with some urban agricultural space that can provide this access to healthy, fresh foods, a closer connection between residents and their food system, and opportunities for community building and beautification in neighborhoods. This resolution calls for the assessment of a limited number of suitable sites that, due to particular development challenges, have been rendered vacant and underused. The criteria for assessment includes sites that are prone to flooding, that have limited access or egress, that have a history of agricultural usage, and sites identified by the city or community groups to be desirable for agriculture. I live in the Portola neighborhood of San Francisco, which is known and has been officially declared the Garden District of San Francisco because in the past century, It was a place for new immigrants to establish themselves by growing flowers and produce in the city. Geographically and historically, the Portola has perfect weather conditions for the city to find land and implement a permanent urban agricultural project as a tribute to the neighborhood's roots. And this, I hope, this resolution is a first step to accomplishing that goal. Urban agricultural projects are valuable community assets because they help galvanize neighborhoods, utilize neglected spaces, provide hands-on education about produce and flower cultivation, and serve as an entry point for understanding our larger agricultural system. Long-use land tenure has proven to be a crucial component to any sustainable farming operations, as addressed by State Assembly Bill 551 in 2014. If we want urban agriculture to be a permanent fixture in our city's landscape, to contribute to our local economy and San Francisco's range of educational opportunities, we need to forge a path forward for urban agricultural projects to exist outside of the realm of temporary land use spaces. Before I open it up to Supervisor Tang and my colleagues and public comment, I really just wanted to give a huge thanks to former Supervisor Avalos for beginning this process, to Caitlin Galloway from Little City Gardens, who I know we're going to hear from shortly, Lauren Lewis from SF Urban Agricultural Alliance, Lucia Pullman from the Greenhouse Project, and Juan Carlos Cancino, who is the co-founder of the Greenhouse Project, Eli Ziggis from Spur, and Karen Petreros from the SFB Cause for working with former Supervisor Avalos and my office to author this resolution. I hope this will give us some new momentum so that we can secure our goal of gaining some space where we can have permanent urban agriculture in San Francisco. Thank you so much. Supervisor Tang, did you have any comments? Okay. If none of my colleagues have comments, can we open it up to public comment? And I'm sorry. Mei Ling Huey from Rec and Park is here and had a brief presentation for us. I'm sorry, Mei Ling. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, supervisors, for having this discussion today. My name is Mei Ling. I'm the brand new Urban Ag and Community Gardens Program Manager for Recreation and Park. I recently moved to Rec and Park from the Department of the Environment, where I worked for 10 years on a variety of things, including urban agriculture policy. So I actually worked on a lot of those policies that you mentioned in your introduction, Supervisor Ronan. I'm delighted to be part of Rec and Park and providing some more direct service, and I'm also very happy to be here to talk about urban agriculture policy and community garden support for San Francisco. So overall, I wanted to give some kind of guideline or some overview of what Rec and Park does to support community gardens and urban ag in San Francisco, and then take some questions. So we have two major roles for supporting community gardens. One is to provide direct support to gardens and provide opportunities for volunteer leadership within our community gardens network. And we also have a lead role of coordinating our sister agencies on urban agriculture policy. For that first point, Rec and Park oversees and provides direct support to a network of 39 community gardens. These community gardens have over 1,000 community garden plots available to gardeners in San Francisco. We also have Alamany Farm, which is the largest and longest running urban farm in San Francisco. That farm has approximately 7,000 hours of volunteer service dedicated to that site every year, so we're very proud of that site. We also acknowledge there is a very high unmet need for community garden space and gardening space in general in San Francisco. We have more than 3,500 people signed up on our wait list to get a community garden plot right now. So that demonstrates if we have about 1,100 plots, and we have 3,500 people waiting for a plot. So for our second role, Recreation and Park supports urban agriculture policy and programming citywide. As part of that, we're reconvening the citywide urban ag working group. We're also working to reestablish the open garden work days and garden resource center days, where we give away resources to community gardeners to use in their gardens or wherever they're gardening. And we're also looking to identify additional stakeholders to facilitate some free workshops and additional workshops that'll benefit all of our city residents. I'm happy to take any questions if you had any.
Great. I think I'm going to open it up to public comment if my colleagues don't have any questions, and then we might call you up for questions at the end, if that's okay. Okay, thank you so much. So with that, I will actually open it up for public comment.
All right. Any members of the public wish to speak on item number 2 in public comment, please feel free to comment on up. Everyone will have 2 minutes. Line up against the far wall, and we'll get going.
My name is Karen Peteros, and I'm here on behalf of San Francisco Bee Cause in support of the resolution. Our organization was founded in 2010. We are fiscally sponsored by the San Francisco Parks Alliance. We have 3 mission objectives. 1, to educate residents why there is no need to be afraid of bees, whether they're native bees or honeybees, what kind of native bees exist in San Francisco and what we can do to help them, and why our honeybees and native bees are important even in an urban environment. In short, their pollination services help our urban agriculture be more successful and also help maintain and increase biodiversity. From 2010 to 2012, we were based at Hayes Valley Farm on the part that has since been developed for housing. In 2012, we obtained a charitable use of about a half an acre, an empty lot on San Bruno Avenue at Ordway on the edge of the Portola and the Visitation Valley neighborhoods. Since then, we have turned that empty lot from a neighborhood eyesore into eye candy. We call our site the Bee Farm, where we have conducted 3 projects. First, we won a 2-year beekeeping apprenticeship program. We just began our 5th such program. For educational and demonstration purposes, we grow bee-pollinated agricultural and other flowering plants, all managed by volunteers. We conduct seasonal native bee surveys. 2017 will be our 3rd year. There is nothing like the Bee Farm anywhere in the United States. I've looked, I've searched, there simply isn't. And we also are unique in the terms that we are entirely self-supporting through sale of the honey produced by our 6 to 8 honeybee colonies managed by our beekeeping apprenticeship program. Our site was sold in October. The new owner plans to develop housing. That's great, but we also want to continue, and we are looking for a site.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Supervisors, thank you so much for having this hearing on this important topic today. My name is Isabel Wade. I'm the president of Urban Resource Systems. We are the home of Just One Tree Project and past home of a variety of other green projects. We have been advocating for greater urban self-reliance in food production for 30 years. Our city does a great job, I think, in setting the goals for reducing our carbon footprint, but I think the food area is especially hard. I think most of us know that the majority of our food comes from more than 2,000 miles away, and that at every meal, at least 5 ingredients come from another country. So we must focus on food production in our city. And I think many people have thought we simply couldn't do it here, that we didn't have the land. But we do have some land that we can save, and we have other production sites that are important. We can go vertical, which is the nature of our little demonstration project, Just One Tree. Our goal is to show that any city, even the most second-dense city in America, namely San Francisco, can be self-reliant in some crops. We picked lemon trees. We need only 11,000 of them to be self-sufficient. So that's what we've been trying to do. This legislation is important because public land is where a lot of this food production can take place. But many of the agencies that have some land do not think about it in terms of food production. So I'd like to suggest that this legislation add to the list, maybe include all city agencies. Our biggest lemon orchard site is at the Juvenile Justice Center, and they wouldn't have normally been thinking about food production, but they have a good leader there. So I would expand all of the legislation to include all city agencies reporting about what land they have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Tom Radulovich with Livable City, here to support this ordinance. We think that urban Agriculture, community gardens, community farms, and commercial agriculture is a really important part of a livable city. If you look at studies from Philadelphia and studies here, having access to community gardens and farms, so people being able to grow their own food, improves people's nutrition. It helps their pocketbook. Lower income folks can raise some of their own food, save a lot of money, builds community. A huge number of urban garden participants report better connections with neighbors, improved mental health, improved physical health, and so on. So there's myriad benefits. There are a lot of competing uses for land, but this is an important one. So as we move forward with this, and we hope you will, think about equity. We had an intern map community gardens and did the same thing that we've done if you look at the general plan, with playgrounds, you draw a radius around playgrounds in San Francisco, you realize they're these sort of deserts. They're low-income communities, communities with a lot of SNAP recipients who don't have community gardens in their neighborhoods. So the key piece is opportunity, obviously. You got to find land that's vacant. But as you're looking or assessing, think about equity and mapping. Think about another standard for access. There's another few opportunities here, too. Hong Kong grows quite a lot of food on rooftops. We have this green rooftop ordinance that we passed last year. A lot of that might be habitat, like at the Academy of Sciences. That's great. We do need more habitat. Some of that could be urban agriculture. You should look at the public right-of-way. 25% of our city is in the public right-of-way, meaning it's streets. I think there's about 1,300 blocks that are unaccepted, meaning not city-maintained. That's a huge land resource. You could find a square mile, another square mile of San Francisco green space by just taking something like 10% of the public right-of-way and converting it to green space. So a lot of opportunities, and hopefully this is just the beginning of a conversation about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Caitlin Galloway. I'm the co-founder of Little City Gardens, a recently closed farm over in D11. Until our closing in December, we were San Francisco's only existing commercial farm. We grew food and flowers for local residents, markets, and restaurants. We offered internship programs and hosted weekly no experience necessary educational work days. We worked on site 4 to 5 days a week for close to 7 years, and when we were there, the gate was open for neighbors to come in freely. I'm here to spotlight Little City Gardens' situation as an example because it contextualizes the issue we're talking about today, which is land access for urban ag. 203 Cotter was an oddly shaped, narrow property. It flooded easily. It was only accessible on one short side. It was surrounded closely by backyards. Owners over the years had failed to get permits for housing development, and before we activated the site in 2010, complaints about blight and safety hazards were common. This property is notable here because it was, by many accounts, a particularly challenging site for development. It sat vacant for decades, and a particularly well-suited site for a neighborhood farm. Unfortunately, despite our efforts toward purchase, we had been in conversation over the years with SFPUC and various land trusts, to name a few. It went on the market in 2014 and was purchased very quickly. This past fall, despite hundreds of community members voicing their support of farming on site, the Planning Commission felt their hands were tied without tools to support the current use and approved plans for development. So the loss of this site, a site where much of our recent urban ag policy conversations originated, has been a huge blow. So today, as a landless urban farmer with incredible firsthand experience around all of urban ag's benefits, I look to this resolution to help us all figure out how to move forward from here. I think there's still a lot of untapped potential in our urban ag movement, but the availability of farmable parcels, cultivatable soil is dwindling, so it's clear that we need further city support. I hope we'll get votes in your favor, or I hope we'll get your votes in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Lewis. I am a co-coordinator of the San Francisco Urban Agriculture Alliance. As a group, the SF Urban Ag Alliance worked to help pass AB 551, and we were proud that San Francisco was the first to implement urban ag incentive zones, and we believe that this resolution would be a way for the city to show its continued resolve for supporting urban agriculture. Just a couple of years ago, the first urban ag coordinator for the city, for Rec Park, did survey work that clearly showed public interest in urban agriculture. People want to get involved in it. They know all of the benefits. And but as you know, we have high property values, not enough housing. So the city is responsible to try to prioritize urban ag in the places where it is where it can happen. I believe this resolution can help show San Francisco residents and also other cities that the government of San Francisco is dedicated to making sure that we don't lose these more spaces that are possible for urban agriculture, where there's obviously not as high of a monetary value, but there's a lot of other value there. So please vote yes on this resolution. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrice. I'm a night warehouser in the Bayview, and I'm also an assistant at a farm in Alameda that provides employment to formerly homeless trainees. I'm here today to support the resolution, which so many of us believe will be a great step in the right direction for urban ag in this city. There are a few institutions that can rival the positive impact that urban ag and urban farms can have on a community. I can attest that for myself, I wouldn't be where I am today without the experience that I had working at Little City Gardens, an urban farm that had thrived in this city for years before getting forced out by developers. On a regular basis, at the farm I work at today, the trainees at our farm tell us stories about how working at the farm contributes to their family's health and well-being, and a number of our residents who no longer work there have become regular volunteers themselves. Urban agriculture creates invaluable intersectional spaces where art, health, food, ecology, economy, culture, community, blight, justice, climate, accessibility, sustainability, politics, family, and so many other issues and concerns come together in a very unique and important ways. And these are front and center issues that deserve direct attention and engagement. They should not be pushed to the margins, and there should be space for them in the city to keep them accessible and connected to the communities that they are part of. Farmable land in the city is a rare resource that will be sorely missed when paved and developed. And once it's turned into condos and development, how can these spaces be recovered? The city has already made hard-fought for steps towards supporting urban ag in the past. And this resolution is another incredibly valuable step in the right direction for supporting urban ag and a step towards continuing to cultivate a city that is proudly leading the way for progress in this nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Eli Zekas, and on behalf of SPUR, I'm here to support the resolution. And I want to thank Supervisors Ronan and Tang for putting it forward. SPUR supports the expansion of urban ag for a variety of reasons. You've heard many of them. I think one of the biggest ones is education, connecting people here in the city to a sense of where food comes from, what fresh food is, and what it takes to grow it. In a 2012 report we published called Public Harvest, we recommended that the city do just what this resolution calls for, continue to identify public land or sites for acquisition where we could expand urban agriculture into. I do want to note that there was, coming off the 2009 executive directive, an inventory that looked at this, and Mei Ling's the one who pulled it together. There are sites that weren't on that inventory that now the PUC is developing for urban ag, which is an indication that if we keep looking, there's a good chance we'll find additional spots. There is, I understand, a concern about competition with housing. Working at SPUR, we understand this. We want to see more housing, and I'd say three things about that. We want a mix of open space and housing in a city. We want both. Not all sites are suitable for housing, and not all sites are suitable for urban agriculture. The decision of what use a site should have should be on a case-by-case basis, and importantly, this resolution doesn't dictate where this is going to happen. So all it's doing is calling for the city to examine this, to identify sites, and then evaluate them. And it's at that point, the evaluation, that I think we can do the balancing between housing, urban ag, or other uses. I really hope you'll support this, and thank you for considering it.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Rika Sungakwan, and I volunteered at Little City Gardens for a year and a half during the end of its life as a farm. It was such a unique place, especially being in a city environment. The more I got involved, the more I learned about urban agriculture and that other cities all over the U.S. had urban farms popping up, places like Austin, Portland, Brooklyn, to name a few. That's why I found it shocking that the planning department failed to support the protection of Little City Gardens. San Francisco, a place that usually is at the forefront of social and progressive change, couldn't protect its only viable commercial farm. There was a ton of support from the community to keep this farm operational. Neighbors came out in strong support for the farm. One can't argue the positive impacts of having a farmable plot as your neighbor, with real estate value, pollution and noise reduction, as well as educational opportunities for children and adults. I myself was inspired to start my own small business during my time here. I started making and selling ice cream with ingredients grown in my own backyard urban farm. But in order to grow this business, I will be needing a farmable plot in the future. With the farm-to-table movement now growing and being the norm, I imagine I'm not the only one. Please support this resolution. It's beneficial to our economy, neighborhoods, and our environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Richard Chung. I've been a volunteer at Little City Gardens for the past 5 years. I just want to say how grateful I am to have stumbled upon them, and I'm in support of this resolution. I went to school at Thurgood Marshall, and walking home in the Portola district, I just see everything is just concrete, and I'm just grateful about having been involved with that and nurturing that aspect in me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Thank you, Supervisor Ronan, for introducing this legislation. My name is Lucia Pullman, and I am here today on behalf of the Greenhouse Project. We are a nonprofit based in San Francisco's Portola district, and our current central project concerns 770 Woolsey Street, an entire city block of dormant greenhouses. We are working to develop the site as an urban farm to the benefit of the Portola community in San Francisco at large. First, I want to echo everyone's sentiments about the robust benefits of urban agriculture for the environment and the health and well-being of those engaged, and how critical those are for the residents of San Francisco. This legislation addresses an obstacle that came up frequently when we interviewed dozens of urban farmers across the nation: how difficult it is to find, secure access to, and continue using land for agriculture in America's cities. This is particularly true in San Francisco, where undeveloped land is becoming harder and harder to find, let alone purchase. Given San Francisco's long-standing commitment to sustainability and resilient communities and its recent investments in urban agriculture, the city cannot wait any longer to preserve appropriate parcels for farming. As a promising site that meets all of the criteria set forth in the resolution, 770 Woolsey Street can serve the city through robust educational and job training programs and can be part of the next chapter of urban ag in San Francisco. Speaking on behalf of the broader Portola community, we give our full support to this resolution and its intent to promote and actively develop urban ag assets in the city. Over 100 community members recently gathered to celebrate their neighborhood being recognized as the Garden District, and looks forward to when agriculture is a land use in the Portola district once again. The Portola community urges the committee and the whole board to pass this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Carrie Evensong. I'm a San Francisco resident. I live in the Mission Terrace neighborhood. And Little City Gardens used to be around the corner from my house. And this resolution could have been one of those things that could have saved that. It was the last commercial farm in San Francisco, and it pains me that we lost that battle. And I really want to be part of a city that does so many amazing things, and this resolution could be one of those things that could have saved that farm. And even though maybe it didn't, maybe you can save other farms in this city and create spaces for that movement. So please consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Laura Clark, YIMBY Action. I just want to remind everybody that we're actually less dense than Queens. We have a lot of space where we could be building a lot more housing, especially on the west side, to actually take a real bite out of our climate goals. But additionally, I'm concerned that this kind of resolution could be used to fight against shadows maybe being cast on a community garden, when building infill housing might be the most useful thing to be doing with those spaces. This is the kind of resolution that could be used to fight housing, and obviously that's the only thing I care about, so thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to comment on item number 2? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. Supervisor Rona, I just have one question.
Sure.
Question. First of all, thank you for bringing this forward. I grew up where my mom was a founding member of the community garden at Fort Mason. Actually, it was on federal land. It was different, but it was an awesome part of growing up here in the city of San Francisco, and a lot of the comments around having a diversity of spaces as we grow and not just a concrete jungle, I fully agree with. Only question, I guess, Supervisor Ronan or to our city attorney, how's this going to interact with our surplus housing, our surplus land ordinance? And how will we justify or how do we reconcile the two, if you will?
Sure. Would you like to answer? Yeah. I think we just created in the ordinance sort of a catalog of possible things to look at and to consider when looking at pieces of land, whether they're current surplus property or properties that perhaps the city could acquire to create urban agriculture. So it's not a prescriptive list saying that we should absolutely use every piece of surplus property and evaluate it for land use. It's one piece of the puzzle of looking, is this appropriate for affordable housing development, which is near and dear to my heart, and I very much believe wholeheartedly in our surplus property ordinance, but not all of those pieces of property. Some are too small for housing development, some are inappropriate for it. So when that's the case, it's another aspect to look at when deciding whether or not the particular piece of land would be appropriate for urban agriculture.
Okay. Well done. Okay. Thank you very much. Do you want? Sorry,
sure. I just wanted to really thank everyone for coming out today, and say that we learned, unfortunately, the heartbreaking loss of Little City Gardens and the fight to preserve it, and during that fight, learning about how much that garden brought to the neighborhood and brought to San Francisco as a whole was, a very sad way to be educated as a city about the benefits of urban farming. But I am sad to say we weren't able to save that farm, but hope that loss and the memory of what we no longer have in that farm, together with this resolution, continuing the many years of the city's sort of emphasis and focus on urban agriculture, will renew our sense of urgency around the need to create a new space. And I just really want to echo some of the public comment around equity, and especially in areas of the city that are food deserts, that we particularly look at those areas to potentially either acquire, or if there's surplus property there, to consider for urban agriculture. This is just a resolution. It's just recommitting ourselves to this project, but I certainly am committed to continuing to work on this issue and to partner with Rec and Park, PUC, our real estate division, any city agency that shares this goal, so that we can really realize a permanent space to have additional urban agricultural space, and hopefully another commercial farm here in our city. So with that, colleagues, I would ask for your support today.
Okay. Colleagues, any further questions or comments? Okay, motion by Supervisor Ronan.
Or I don't think I can.
What's that?
Yeah,
We'll make a motion
Okay.
as a committee member.
Thank you very much. Sorry, phasing out here.
I'll make a motion to send forth the resolution to the full board with a positive recommendation.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Tang. Can we take that without objection? So moved. All right. Madam Clerk, would you call item number 3, please?
Item number 3 is an ordinance amending the planning code to bring the requirements and procedures for construction of accessory dwelling units into conformity with new state law mandates and making appropriate findings.
Okay. This item was sponsored by Supervisor Peskin, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Chair Farrell. Supervisor Tang, as you know, over the last decade and maybe dozen years, thinking around secondary units, now we call them accessory dwelling units, has evolved. I think in 2002, I actually introduced an ordinance to try to catalyze the development of more of these in-law type units in San Francisco, but in those days it was the third rail of politics in San Francisco, and I think I fell a vote shy. Fast forward a decade, my successor, David Chu, was able to pass a very similar ordinance, and after that, then Supervisor Wiener did a pilot program in District 8, which became permanent legislation. My predecessor pioneered a similar, albeit somewhat different, ADU legislation for District 3, and then insofar as great minds think alike, the chair of this committee and I had similar pieces of legislation that came down to a coin toss, which I believe Supervisor Tang presided over with Assistant B. Anthony Dollar. So interestingly enough, and while our two pieces of legislation actually largely ended up being conformed to one another and is the subject of ongoing conversations and amendments that we'll be discussing in the weeks ahead, the state legislature passed a law that became effective on January 1st, and I was informed by the deputy city attorney that technically our law was out of compliance. And so what is before us today is what the city attorney recommends to bring this back into compliance. It was heard by the Planning Commission on February 23rd, and again, briefly, although mostly around procedural matters, last Thursday. And some of the most important suggestions that planning made, I have gotten the city attorney to incorporate, and they are ready to speak to, and I will hand to you, colleagues. There is one, and here is another. Actually, that one's for the original version. It's fine. They're the same. Doesn't matter. And so we have representatives from the planning department here today. What I indicated to the Planning Commission I would do was to duplicate the file today, and would like to, in the interest of time, send the first part with a few amendments, and we'll hear from the city attorney about a couple of little missing details, actually typos, really, that we would need to amend in my amendment of the whole. And then the duplicate file would be continued to presumably the Land Use Committee after May 4th, which would be May 8th, I believe, if I'm doing the math right, and we could entertain the trailing amendments on that day. And with that, I am happy to hear from Planning Department staff and colleagues and members of the public.
So, sorry, just to be clear, and I think that sounds good, are you going to speak to these amendments, or is the Planning Department?
So the major amendment is the amendment that was pointed out by Planning Department staff, and that is to have this legislation include single-family homes in multi-family zoning districts, which was necessary and was an oversight in the original legislation, but is necessary to conform with state law. And that amendment is in here. The minor technical amendments, Deputy City Attorney Givner can speak to. Actually, they may be in your version with my little markups. There is a sub 1 that actually is supposed to be sub 3 on. One moment. I gave you the one that I marked up. Mr. Givner, you want to speak to those?
So maybe, hold on, maybe we could take a, no, Mr. Givner, whoever, take a step back and just, as opposed to flipping through things and hominum here going through different amendments, could we talk holistic, just one by one about what these amendments are that are contained in here? Planning or to Supervisor Pasco?
Good afternoon, Kimia Hadadan, Planning Department staff. I would like to first thank Supervisor Peskin and appreciate his efforts for keeping our ADU program in compliance with state law in a timely manner. The state law finds that if local ADU programs are not in compliance with the state law, they'll be deemed null and void. This item was before the Planning Commission on February 23rd, and they strongly supported the ordinance and recommended the following modifications. The first recommendation is about ADUs in RH1D districts. The proposed ordinance maintains the existing language in the code that makes a general reference to the state law for ADUs in RH1D districts. At the same time, the ordinance creates a detailed new set of standards in compliance with state law for ADUs in single-family homes in RH1 and RH1S districts where no waivers from the planning code is required. The Commission recommends subjecting ADUs in RH1D districts consistently to the same set of standards. Without this recommendation, the department would need to issue a zoning administrator bulletin to implement the state law for ADUs in RH1D districts. To develop this bulletin, the department would duplicate the work of this ordinance in interpreting the state law that informed the new controls proposed in this ordinance. The second recommendation is about the types of spaces eligible to be converted to ADUs. The proposed ordinance would allow taking space from an existing unit, but would not allow taking space from a garage. The Planning Commission recommends including garages as an eligible space to be converted to ADUs. This is consistent with the city's policy around ADUs in the past couple of years, which has always allowed garages to be converted to ADUs. The third recommendation...
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. Is it, just to be clear about that, what lines are we talking about here?
The line in the ordinance?
Uh-huh. For that second part, just so I understand.
Let me pull it up. So it's on page 4, line 21. It says the ADU will be constructed entirely within the...
Okay, so that is the living area versus built, versus the envelope.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Recommendation number 4 is with regards to department's review process. The proposed ordinance maintains that residential design guidelines and applicable historic review process is allowed within the ministerial review process. The Commission recommends clarifying that these review processes have to be completed within 120 days as required by state law. The recommendation number 5 suggests clarifying the types of historic preservation review the department can conduct within the ministerial review process. The Commission recommends allowing this review process for all known historic resources. As written in the proposed ordinance, it would allow only preservation review to properties listed in the California Register of Historic Places. The last recommendation, recommendation number 6, would allow ADUs in single-family homes in multifamily zone parcels to also be subject to ministerial review. This is the one that Supervisor Peskin already spoke about. As written, the proposed ordinance would only require ADUs in single-family zone districts to be reviewed ministerially. This recommendation would help provide consistent and equal options for single-family homeowners, regardless of the zoning district. On February 23rd, the Commission also received a letter from Supervisors Farrell and Sheehy with 6 amendments. On that date, the Commission decided that they don't have enough information for those amendments and did not recommend those or did not discuss those modifications. Those amendments came back to the Commission last Thursday, and then after the Commission had a discussion, they also deferred that decision until this file is duplicated and brought back as an ordinance. This concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Okay. I'll just say again, and also in the interest of time, I'm happy to put these items forward. The amendments, I think we're all interested in making sure they comply with state law or existing ordinance, and so happy to push that item forward. I have a number of amendments that we talked about at planning last week that I will make, and we can make those amendments on a duplicated file and continue it until our Planning Commission has debated those or discussed those, certainly. Supervisor Peskin, anything else you want to convey at this point?
So, and we can hear from Deputy City Attorney Givner, but I believe on page 4, I believe it's line 22, where it says subsection C6, C1. I think that should be changed to C6, C3. Is that correct? So turn that little I in the amendment of the whole to triple I, and we need to insert the buildable area, buildable envelope. Where does that go, Deputy City Attorney Givner?
Right after that new small Roman 3, you'd add in or the buildable area to match it up with subsection C6, so that the ordinance is not.
And to match it up with the Section 102 definition.
Yes.
And then I believe on page, let's see if I can find this, there's a sub 5 and a sub 6 that need to be changed to a sub, or sub 4, sub 5 that need to be changed to a 5 and 6. That would be, I believe, on page 8, line 4. Is that correct?
Right.
Subsection C6C, strike 4, and it should be the letter V as in 5, and 5 should become 6.
Correct. And the same changes should be made to the duplicated version as well, because we made the same errors in both.
So I would like to make a motion to amend those amendments into both files.
Okay, so at this point, we haven't duplicated the file yet, so we can.
Okay.
Correct? I just want to make sure.
It's the privilege of a single supervisor
Right.
to duplicate. My understanding was that Supervisor Peskin duplicated, but that's not.
I think I said the magic words, but I'm happy to say them again. I would like to duplicate the file and would ask colleagues that we make those technical amendments to both files.
Okay, so we can make those technical amendments to both files. We can take that without objection.
Mr. Chair, we need to take public comment still.
Thank you very much. And then before public comment, then let me, I'll distribute here to my colleagues as well a number of amendments that we talked about at our planning department last week that we'll be putting into the duplicated file that we will certainly entertain to continue until our planning commission has discussed them. And happy to talk through them if people have any questions, or else I will save, from a timing perspective, comments until we do discuss them in greater detail. With that, we'll open this up to public comment. Anybody wish to comment on item number 3, please step forward. Everyone will have 2 minutes.
My name is Michael Murphy. I'm had a career as a judicial attorney for the Court of Appeal. For my greatest professional boast is that I worked for Justice Newsom. I was hired by him and worked for him until his retirement. I have examined the proposed amendment to comply with state law and find that it does not make any contribution toward that end, although many of the amendments have some value. I've distributed a legal analysis, and obviously within the time allowed, I cannot go through that. I'll merely highlight the points. Number 1, the ordinance retains the definition of ADU in Section 102. It's more restrictive than state law. It's now a dead letter. Secondly, the ordinance makes distinctions according to zones. The state law allows ADUs in any residential area, so those distinctions are void. Thirdly, in an apparent attempt to comply with the ministerial mandate of state law, it allows for a speedy approval for a narrow category of applications. That restriction is also void, as a ministerial approval is required for all applications coming within the state definition. Lastly, I want to raise the important question, does speedy approval comply? Maybe, but it does not meet the test of practicality. It would be folly for the planning department to commit itself to accept, without modification, anything that complies with the few sketchy requirements in the law. What is called for is an implementation document, as we have in other parts of the code.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yep, everyone has 2 minutes. Okay. Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Afternoon again, Supervisors. Corey Smith on behalf of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. It was our understanding that before those amendments were introduced that the legislation proposed would not get us in compliance with state law. I'm operating under the assumption that is the case now, so we wholeheartedly support pushing it forward, but also do want to reiterate the fact that there's a lot more that we can be doing. We are supportive of Supervisor Farrell and Sheehy's amendments and look forward to improving our accessory dwelling unit laws in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Laura Clark, YIMBY Action. To pick up on what Michael Murphy was saying, the most important next step for this is to make the ADU handbook into an actual implementation document so that someone can go down to planning and run down the rules and not have to go through these discretionary processes. The current legislation, while obviously we are taking steps in the direction and this is an improvement, does not get us to ministerial approval. These need to be rubber stamped. Additionally, the next step is backyard cottages. There is no justification for having this not apply to granny flats and cottages in people's backyards, purely based on what? Neighbors not wanting to look at them. It doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't interfere with the interconnected private backyards. I beg you to really expedite this process. Additionally, I think we let politics get in the way of good policy. And I understand that Supervisor Peskin really made this a little bit personal when there was an opportunity to make this all about the good policy. It's a little rude that you guys aren't listening, which I understand often happens at these hearings, but it's a good idea to try to make a good faith effort to make sure that the public feels like they're being listened to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Paul, and homeowner at 34th and Ortega and Supervisor Tang's district, and I'm grateful to be here, be speaking in front of you to city supervisors. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Several months ago, I went to a planning 1660 mission, and I was told that I could build an ADU on either side of our foyer, and we also own a duplex 2 blocks away from University of San Francisco, and which is where there's a high demand for housing. And then I went back a few weeks later and asked, would it be okay to build 2 ADUs? And I was told that would not be acceptable. So I want to. We also have a very large garage in our house at 34th and Ortega that would probably accommodate 2 ADUs. So I want to appeal to city supervisors and to the powers that be to please expedite this process of approving Supervisor Peskin's hard work and conforming with state law, and also future amendments as Supervisor Farrell and Sheehy have put forth. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Tom Radulovich from Livable City. I think the previous item, the discussion of community garden space, just points out why efforts like this are important. If we're really going to accommodate all of the things that we want to accommodate in San Francisco, all the green space, all the housing, PDR uses, jobs, et cetera, we really need to be smarter about how we use space in this city. And the ADU ordinances, and there have been quite a few of them, have really progressed us in that way. Using underutilized space or unused space in existing buildings is really just about the smartest place you can put housing. So we just commend all of you for your work on this. Supervisor Peskin, thank you for bringing this forward. It's a good piece of legislation. We appreciate the planning department's careful reading of it and their amendments. We think that brings it in even closer conformity with state law. And Supervisor Farrell, thank you, and Supervisor Sheehy for your excellent ideas. We do think that the 6 ideas that you put forward will advance this program. It keeps going from strength to strength. We, I think, keep finding new ways. You think about 3 years ago, this was like the biggest planning imperative was stopping these things from happening. And now we're trying to turn that ship. We're trying to say these are actually good for the city. And of course, our planning code is the Winchester Mystery House. So it's often difficult to find all of the things that are working at contrary purposes in there. So it's going to be probably a few more iterations of this before it's all done. But we appreciate everyone's forbearance in making this go. We look forward to seeing the amendments on those 6 ideas that were in the letter from Supervisors Farrell and Sheehy. We think they'd be great additions to this growing body of law in favor of ADUs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Supervisors. Christy Wong from Spur. I'll try to keep it short since I think I'm in agreement with many of the other speakers. Thank you to the supervisors for continuing this conversation. In the 3 years that I have been at Spur, it has radically transformed the conversation, the number of people in this room, and the direction in which they are bent is a complete shift, and that is due to a lot of the leadership that you guys have shown us. I just wanted to say that we support the legislation with the Planning Commission's recommendations. The modifications add clarity to the ordinance and also align the ordinance with some existing provisions in our code. And further, we do urge you to consider the recommendations in Supervisor Farrell and Supervisor Shee's letter from April 4th, and hope that we can continue even beyond that and to further efforts to make it an easier ordinance to use and encourage homeowners to make these decisions on their own. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak, and thank you to Supervisor Peskin for bringing forward this ordinance as well. I'm very excited to see that this is going to bring our city into sync with the current state law ordinance that is coming in. I just wanted to voice again the concerns that some of the folks here have mentioned, that while this new ordinance brings us forward, it doesn't really push us in the direction fully as it could to allowing people to utilize the space that they have to provide more affordable housing on the market. In particular, as mentioned, obviously freestanding ADUs have not been considered at all, and these provide another opportunity to add more affordable housing. And I also wanted to just second the comment that we absolutely would need an implementation document as soon as possible. Already the existing ADU handbook is no longer applicable and helpful to those who are going on to the resources to try and find out what is possible in the city. So that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak on item number 3? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. I just had a clarifying question, and since Supervisor Yee's here, it might be timely. I just had a question in response to the Planning Department's presentation regarding RH1D zones, and just wanted to get clarification about what it is that state law allows. But I see that we do on page 6, for example, still, I guess, exempt out RH1D from the criteria that you set out here. So I just wanted to get a little clarification on that.
The section that's under page 6, that was put in the code when we were doing the citywide legislation, and there was interest in basically excluding RH1D from the local ADU program, so that's why that was put in the code. And the reason that the Commission is recommending to make it consistent is because state law now applies to single-family homes in all districts, so they all should be consistent, and there's no need for them to be singled out.
Right. So I think, I mean, again, it's timely that Supervisor Yee's here, but just in terms of how our local, laws now interact with state law, I'm just wondering are we going to run into any risks because we do carve out RH1D? I mean, I absolutely remember the conversation that occurred when we first passed the ADU legislation, but since the reason why we're here is because we need to conform our local program to state law. I just want to make sure that what we have here is okay.
Sure. Deputy City Attorney John Givner, the RH1D zoned areas will be subject to state law. Our local program applies to everything else, so all zoning districts will be in compliance with state law. They'll just be treated differently. RH1D still kind of carved out, but still subject to the state law requirements.
Okay, and then I guess how would RH1Ds be treated differently compared to our program then?
So the department would need to interpret the state law and maybe create a zoning administrative bulletin for ADUs in RH1D, basically to lay out how the details of ADU program in RH1D, which is why the commission recommended to make things consistent, so we won't have to do that.
Right, and so, I mean, for example, are some of the things that would be different the approval process, the timeline, or I mean, what are some of the key differences that we might see come up with an RH1D approval of an ADU versus a non-RH1D?
I mean, I have to defer to our zoning administrator to interpret state law. Basically, I mean, the same effort has been gone through to put together this ordinance to interpret the state law. We'll have to do it for RH1Ds.
Okay, well, I look forward to that conversation, and Supervisor Yee, I hope you took note. Because, I mean, personally, I do feel that we should go with planning's recommendation to make it all consistent, but of course I defer to the district supervisor who made that initial request. But I'll look forward to following up with you once the zoning administrator has made that determination.
Okay, Supervisor Peskin.
I believe we've heard from the city attorney that it is their position that this does what needs to be done in order to comply with the law that went in effect at the state level that preempted us as to single-family homes, and appreciate colleagues our tying up this loose end and look forward to working together to further strengthen our ADU legislation come May the 8th. And as a technical matter, the clerk requests that I unduplicate the file, that we make these technical amendments to the amendment of the whole, and then duplicate the file. So in deference to our great clerk, I would like to unduplicate the file, and colleagues ask that we make the technical amendments that Deputy City Attorney Givner read into the record, and then we will duplicate it and send one forward with recommendation and continue the other to May 8th.
Okay, so just to be clear right here, right now we're going to make these amendments and we're going to, and then duplicate, well, first of all, motion to accept these amendments. We can take that without objection. Motion by Supervisor Peskin, we can take that without objection. Then, Madam Clerk, we're going to duplicate the file.
Yes.
As amended. We're going to send the first version forward to the full Board of Supervisors. So motion to that effect, motion by Supervisor Peskin to that effect. We can take that up without objection. And then the second item, the duplicated file, the second one, if we could accept the amendments that I have distributed and then continue that item to the call of the chair. Motion by Supervisor Tang. Can we take that without objection?
Sure, I haven't read them, but I'm happy to do that so we can circulate them to the public and discuss them whenever you call it.
Terrific. So motion by Supervisor Tang, we can take that without objection. Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. With that, would you call item number 4?
Item number 4 is an ordinance amending the planning code to clean up, clarify, correct, and update provisions in various sections that deal with parking and loading requirements and making appropriate findings.
Okay, thank you. So I know we have MTA here. However, we do not have the language from our city attorney's office ready for this item. So I'm going to ask colleagues if we could continue this item to our next regular scheduled land use committee meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have a date specific on that next Monday?
The next meeting will be the 24th.
Okay, so colleagues, we'll open this up to public comment, but if we could continue this item, I do want to make sure that we have the actual language in front of us before we are debating or discussing these issues. Hopefully it's very technical in matter regardless, but I think we should have it in front of us. So with that, colleagues, I will open this up to public comment. Anybody wish to comment on item number 4? On 4? Come on board.
Great. Tom Radulovich, Executive Director of Livable City. I can't be here on the 24th, but do recommend this ordinance. And just wanted to thank the Planning Department staff and Supervisor Farrell for taking it on. As I mentioned before, we do have the Winchester Mystery House of Planning Codes. We've been undergoing a major effort to clean the code up. This is the second phase of that effort. Right now, if you look at the parking requirements in Section 1.5, it's often very unclear what the requirements are for any given use, because the uses described in there refer to either old ways of describing uses or they were ambiguous in the first place. So this will clean up all of those references. We're glad that the cleanup's getting the cleanup that it needs and finding all of the little odds and ends, but we think this is a really important project. It's completely unsexy, but we think it's going to make life easier for a lot of people at the planning department. It's going to make life easier for members of the public. It's going to make life easier for developers. And as we actually do go to make substantive changes in the code, as we were finding today with the ADU ordinance, having a lean and logically organized code makes that easier. You're at much less risk when you're trying to do something substantive of doing something unintended. So we think it's an important project. Just commend everybody for working on it and hope you will support it on the 24th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to comment on item number 4? We will continue. Okay.
Sorry, super quickly. Christy Wong from Spur. Spur supports this non-substantive change to make a better planning code for San Francisco, and we would echo Livable City's comments that we would like to see more substantive changes to parking in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment on item 4? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Colleagues, could I entertain a motion to continue this item for 1 week?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Peskin. We can take that without objection. Madam Clerk, what do you call item 5?
Item number 5 is an ordinance amending the planning code to add an option for the dwelling unit mix of large buildings in specified zoning districts to allow 2 and 3 bedroom units that result in at least 50% of the bedrooms being in units that have more than 1 bedroom, and making appropriate findings.
Okay, thank you very much. This item was sponsored by Supervisor Yee. I will turn it over to him, but before I do so, I just want to ask Madam Clerk if I could be added as a co-sponsor, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Farrell and colleagues. The legislation before you today has been in the works for well over a year. As you know, I have been working with the planning department on identifying ways we can make housing more family-friendly. When we started working on the family-friendly housing policy paper that was published earlier this year, we held a number of focus groups. One of the earlier meetings was with market rate developers to get a better understanding of why family-friendly units weren't being built here in San Francisco. One of the many ingredients that support family-friendly housing is the number of bedrooms in a unit. And the obvious reason was that they did not feel there was a demand for 3-bedroom units. 3-bedroom units are expensive to build, and the market did not justify that cost. And they even said that to me, that they were told that the city didn't need these units. One of the issues developers brought up to my attention was that the current unit mix in certain neighborhood plans was also not conducive to building larger units with 3 bedrooms or more. While credit was given for 2-bedroom units, the same did not apply for 3-bedroom units. In the Eastern Neighborhoods area, there are 2 dwelling unit options for developers. One of them being that you would build at least 40% 2-bedroom units or 30% 3-bedroom units. Almost no projects opted for the first option. Almost all projects opted for the first option, leaving us with very few 3-bedroom units being built. Therefore, I worked on creating a new option to allow for more flexibility to incentivize the building of larger units by creating more of a mix of 2 and 3-bedroom units. The original legislation was proposed included an option that would have encouraged more multi-bedroom units. At least 50% of the bedrooms are in units that have more than 1 bedroom. But after further review, we realized that this formula would encourage more 2-bedroom units, but might not result in any 3-bedroom units at all, which would conflict with our goal. Therefore, after discussions at the Planning Commission, I am presenting an amendment of the whole that revises the formula to require a minimum number of 3-bedroom units, but lowers the requirement of multi-bedroom units for developers. This would give developers an additional option. This option would be that 35% of the units must have 2 or 3 bedrooms, with 10% of all units being 3-bedroom units. I want to emphasize that the legislation would only be proposing an additional option for developers. The existing 2 options that would remain in the Eastern Neighborhood Plans. Right here, what I'm emphasizing is that flexibility is key. We have to have a serious conversation now about what type of city we want to become. Already we have the sad distinction of being a city with the least number of children in any major city. I think the board has made it very clear that this is not acceptable. I recognize that there are a lot of factors that play into a family's decision to stay in the city. Affordability is going to be at the top of that list. However, we also need to recognize that the design and housing stock play a role. We are envisioning building a city with families with children of all ages, a city where we can make housing more family-friendly by design. That means diversifying our housing stock so that there will eventually be more multi-bedroom units for families of all types. I am encouraged by all the positive discussions we are having at the board, the Planning Commission, and throughout the city about how we can do more for families. Right now, we have one simple fix that would encourage more family-size units. I want to thank the staff at the Planning Department, community members of the Potrero Hill Boosters Club, and members of the developer community who have engaged throughout this process. I also want to thank the Housing Action Coalition and SPUR for submitting letters of support. I hope that you will adopt this amendment of the whole and forward it to the Food Board with a positive recommendation. There is one other amendment that I would like this committee to entertain, which is to expand these dwelling unit options to zoning districts similar to eastern neighborhoods. These would include all residential transit-oriented, residential commercial, and neighborhood commercial transit districts. This was one of the recommendations from the city planning's report, city department's report. To speak more about our legislation and this possible amendment, I would like to bring up Aaron Starr from the planning department.
Mr. Starr.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Aaron Starr, Manager of Legislative Affairs for the Planning Department. So the item before you is an ordinance that would add an additional option for the dwelling unit mix requirement in specific zoning districts in order to allow developers to have a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units. The Planning Commission heard this item on June 16th of last year and voted to recommend approval with modifications. The Commission proposed modifications include 1, provide the dwelling unit mix option for bedrooms in RTO, Hayes, Goff, NCT, Upper Market Street, NCT, and NCT 3 districts. This is the amendment that Supervisor Yee just mentioned. 2, to include a minimum percentage floor for 3 bedroom units in the new dwelling unit mix option. And 3, monitor projects that choose the bedroom option and include the data in the annual housing inventory starting in 2019. The department understands that Supervisor Yee's amendments to the whole adds recommendations 2 and 3, but not recommendation 1. The department thanks Supervisor Yee for adding those amendments and for his consideration of recommendation 1, and hopes that further consideration is given to it. We believe that it will provide an option to other zoning districts that have density decontrol. The idea is to make sure that not all units are single bedroom or studio, and so expanding this to all density decontrolled neighborhoods seems to make sense to us. So that concludes my remarks, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Starr? Supervisor Yee, if you have no further comments, I would open this up to public comment.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Starr, for being here. And also, I could see that one of the public speakers coming up is actually where this idea originated from. Thank you, Eric.
Mr. Tao.
Thank you, sir. Supervisors, my name is Eric Tao, President and CEO of AGI Avant Group Incorporated. We are a multifamily housing developer in San Francisco. Having been doing housing development in San Francisco for several years, we know that how housing works in San Francisco is that we have market-driven forces, often tempered by public policy demands and goals. Oftentimes these two things conflict, but where we work together as a city is we try to find a balance to ensure that investment continues to come into the city so that we can produce housing, but we temper the production by achieving these policy goals that we all support, such as trying to keep as many families in San Francisco as possible. I myself have a family and understand how difficult it is. So we work with Supervisor Yee's office to find a economically neutral solution that would allow developers to select an option that would permit three-bedroom construction. Right now, the 30% three-bedroom option has not been selected by any developer I know. Everyone has selected the 40%. So we solve for the same outcome as the 40% two-bedroom and resulted in the 35% mix with twos and threes. We believe, at least our underwriting and several other multifamily developer underwriting results have been that this option would be neutral to the two-bedroom 40%. So I think it's a good option, and hopefully it will result in some three-bedroom production in these districts. Thank you.
Well, again, Supervisors, Corey Smith on behalf of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. Also happy to stand here in support of Supervisor Yee's legislation. And he had said the word a number of times during his comments. It's about flexibility. It's about more options. And it's obviously been a huge priority for Supervisor Yee in keeping families here in San Francisco. And so we appreciate your efforts across the board. But obviously with this piece of legislation as well, please approve and pass it forward today. Thank you.
Hi, Christy Wong from Spur. Also wanted to share support for the dwelling unit mix requirements legislation, appreciating that this is another option for developers to follow that will allow, within the existing policy of trying to ensure that new construction provides a mix of housing units, that this would provide a different way to get there. Did want to flag that there could be potential conflicts coming up when the inclusionary legislation arrives, since both those proposals have different requirements, differing from what it is today and from what this legislation proposes. So hope that will get resolved tidily, and thank you for the opportunity to support this legislation. Appreciate Supervisor Yee's reaching out to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, Supervisors. Tony Kelly. I'm Vice President and Chair of the Development Committee of the Potrero Boosters Neighborhood Association, and I say thank you for having an efficient hearing today, but I did have to run over here to get here in time with how quickly you moved. But we're in strong support of the legislation as written, and certainly thanks to Supervisor Yee for his work on this. We did a lot of number crunching on this measure during the past year or so because we have a lot of experience negotiating with developers in the neighborhood about trying to get more three-bedroom units. And we really think that this option, that this legislation as written, including the 35% option and 10% three bedrooms, really hits the sweet spot to get more three bedrooms, and that does give us more three-bedroom units than we've been able to get in private negotiations with developers on projects so far. We've managed to get to about 42% two and three bedrooms, but hardly any three bedrooms out of it. So a small reduction in the 40% down to 35 to get more three bedrooms is a fair trade as far as we're concerned. So out in the neighborhoods, we support this legislation, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak on item number 5? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you. I want to thank the public for coming out, and especially Eric Tao, who planted the seeds for this. And if we could just hold off a couple of seconds. Supervisor Tang had a question for clarification.
In the interim, Supervisor, you can entertain us with singing or other other forms of communication.
I could, but I won't because I saved that for my grandkids. Go ahead, Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. We were just trying to figure this out because on page 2, starting on lines 24, it references a set of requirements for RTO, generically Hayes, Goff, NCT, Upper Market Street, NCT, and NCT 3 districts. So no less than 40% of the total number of dwelling units on site shall contain at least 2 bedrooms. But what Supervisor Yee is proposing would apply to also RTO districts, generically RCD, NCT districts, DTR, and Eastern neighborhoods. And so we were just trying to clarify with our city attorney's office, there's a repeat of the RTO, so there'd be 2 different requirements. So, love clarification. Thank you.
For Deputy City Attorney John Givner again, this is a issue with the existing law, not the changes that are being proposed in this ordinance. Mr. Starr and I think it might be missing reference to a specific, the mission RTO, but we will look into it rather than propose an amendment today and get you a fix before this is at the board on Tuesday. That works.
Okay.
Okay, we will take note of that. Thank you.
So basically what I'm asking the committee to support would be this, is it amendment of the whole? Or
which I am happy to move.
Okay, and also to the additional amendment that was passed out to you to include these other districts.
Which I am happy to move to the amendment of the whole.
Okay, so we have one motion then to accept the amendment of the whole, and then the additional amendment to the amendment of the whole, and then to forward to our city attorney Givner. We can do this and send it out.
Sorry, I was discussing the RTO issue on the side. The additional amendment was, what was the additional amendment that you just referenced?
Supervisor Yee, could you speak to the additional amendment?
So the additional amendment actually provides language that will clarify that these other districts would be included in to be added as using this option.
Okay, so the additional amendment is a substantive amendment that would require a continuance and another hearing in this committee.
So as to the form-based zoning districts, the RTO, NCT, et cetera, now that we've incorporated them, I would move that we continue this item 1 week.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, again, the consolidated motion on the amendment of the whole, plus this additional amendment, and then part of that motion as well, we will continue this item for 1 week till April 24th. Okay, motion by Supervisor Peskin. Take it out without objection. Supervisor Tang, we're good? Okay, so moved. Madam Clerk, do we have anything else in front of us today?
That concludes our business for today.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.